The file opens with the hiss of stale air escaping a forgotten envelope, marked Naval Intelligence, Restricted. Inside is a report the Admiralty once denied existed. The first line is handwritten, almost casual, as if the officer recording it did not yet grasp its significance. Landing party from submarine HMSX, disembarked on enemy coast, executed sabotage against railway target, returned without loss. The note feels understated, because what actually happened was extraordinary. This was the only known event in the Second World War where a submarine crew, the sailors themselves, not a commando unit, slipped ashore in occupied Europe, evaded German patrols, laid explosives beneath an active railway, and derailed a train before returning to the sea unseen. The first frames take us back to the chaos of WWII soldiers fighting across Europe. These battles shaped the men inside the submarine. They were not trained commandos. They were mechanics, torpedomen, radio specialists, ordinary Royal Navy sailors thrown into a conflict that no longer allowed clean lines between front and rear. The collapse of France in 1940 turned every shoreline into hostile territory. Germany's occupation carved Europe into fortified zones watched by sentries, patrol boats, and field gendarmerie. Yet in the middle of that dark geography, a British submarine was sent on a mission that sounded closer to fiction than strategy. Images of tanks advancing through ruined towns remind us of why such missions were conceived. After the rapid German victories, the Allies needed to strike back anywhere, anyhow. Sabotage was no longer the realm of spies alone. Railway lines fed the German war machine. Destroying even a small bridge or junction slowed troop movements, delayed reinforcements, and forced the Reich to stretch manpower to guard every mile of rail. Sabotage had become a weapon. Then a ship sinking under fire, a stark reminder of the stakes. The U-boat war in the Atlantic had killed thousands. Submarines were predators, but also prey. Every time a submarine surfaced near enemy shores, it gambled with survival. Yet the crew of HMSX, its name redacted in early post-war accounts, accepted the risk. Their orders were simple. Insert a party of sailors onto the coast of occupied France, destroy a strategic rail link used by German troop trains, and return before detection. Fighter planes sweep across the next frame. The skies over Europe in 1942 were contested, lethal, and unpredictable. For a submarine crew surfacing close to shore, the threat of Luftwaffe patrols was constant. Their operation had to take place at night, with no radio transmissions, no signatures, no trace. Bombed ruins evoked the brutal logic of the war. Every destroyed street in Rotterdam, Belgrade, Minsk, and London testified to the scale of violence. But the sabotage of a railway line, quiet, precise, was a different kind of strike. Subtle enough to be deniable, small enough to be forgotten, yet powerful enough to disrupt logistics when every hour mattered. The next frames show Allied troops landing on beaches, symbolic of the amphibious invasions that defined the Western Front. But long before Normandy, long before the Great Armadas arrived, small teams of daring men landed in darkness to weaken the enemy from within. The submarine crew who would derail a train at night were not assault troops. They carried the bare minimum: wire cutters, demolition charges, pistols. No heavy gear, no backup. Civilians fleeing destroyed towns remind us what lived behind enemy lines. The region the submarine crew entered was scarred by German occupation. Curfews, patrols, roadblocks. Civilians watched every stranger. Local resistance was active but cautious. A single misstep could lead to reprisals. Radio operators tapping coded messages reflect the silent struggle behind the operation. Orders were transmitted in ciphers. The submarine maintained strict radio silence as it surfaced near the French coast. Intelligence had identified a rail junction feeding German coastal divisions. It was lightly guarded, isolated, and timed to receive regular troop movements. The submarine would insert a landing party and wait submerged offshore. Red Cross nurses in the next image remind us of the human cost. Every convoy lost, every saboteur captured, every failed mission left the burden on others. Nurses sterilizing instruments by candlelight, doctors working through exhaustion, families receiving telegrams. Generals studying invasion maps evoke the strategic calculations behind the raid. German divisions moved constantly along Europe's rail grid, reinforcing the Atlantic Wall, redeploying after partisan attacks, responding to Allied misdirection. Interrupting a single link could ripple across command structures. Prisoners behind barbed wire reflect the risk the sailors faced if captured. Naval personnel operating behind enemy lines did not enjoy the protections normally afforded to POWs. Spies and saboteurs were treated under the infamous commando order, often executed without trial. The submarine crew who volunteered knew this. Propaganda posters show the competing narratives of the time. German radio boasted of an unbreakable occupation. British media praised the quiet resilience of resistance movements. Neither side knew of this submarine raid, not then, not for years. The image of submarines at sea brings the story back to the moment of insertion. The British boat rose silently in the moonless water. The landing party slid into a small inflatable craft. They paddled through surf toward a coastline dotted with German outposts. Their footsteps pressed into wet sand, Royal Navy sailors walking in enemy territory. They moved inland, avoiding roads, following a map memorized in the submarine's cramped mess compartment. Winter soldiers trudging through snow reflect the harsh conditions across the war, although this raid occurred in warmer months. Yet the cold fear was real. Every sound could betray them. Every farmhouse might conceal gendarmes. The victory celebration image foreshadows the eventual Allied triumph, but in 1942, when this raid occurred, victory was not guaranteed. The enemy was strong. The coastline bristled with defenses. Ruins of Berlin show how the war would end, but when the sailors crept toward the rail embankment, the Reich seemed unstoppable. They reached the track shortly before midnight. A sentry's lantern burned faintly in the distance. The team crawled beneath the rails, set their charges, timed the fuses with meticulous precision, and began their retreat. Women in factories serve as a reminder that sabotage targeted the arteries feeding the industrial war machine. Steel, fuel, locomotives, all depended on railways kept running around the clock. Artillery fire evokes the larger violence enveloping Europe. But the thunder of explosions that night came not from guns, but from a detonated track section. Minutes later, a German troop train derailed violently. Cars jackknifed, rails twisted, German units scrambled to respond. The landing party reached the beach with the first hints of alarm rising inland. They paddled back to the submarine, signaled twice, and were hauled aboard. The submarine dove immediately, leaving nothing behind but churned foam. American and British officers planning D-Day symbolized the future this small act helped shape. Sabotage missions like this, largely forgotten, demonstrated that enemy defenses could be penetrated, that German logistics could be disrupted, that even ordinary sailors could become effective covert operators. Bombers over a city closed the story. The war would grow in scale beyond anything imagined by those sailors on the French coast. But their mission, small, precise, daring, remains a testament to the improvisation and courage that defined the Allied effort. A submarine crew slipped into darkness, walked ashore, derailed a German train, and vanished back into the Atlantic without a trace. It is a reminder that in the vast machinery of the Second World War, even the smallest acts of sabotage could echo across continents, shaping the outcome of a conflict fought in fields, oceans, skies, and the shadows in between.